when I woke up this morning, I was like, I forgot. I was going to text you last night, but then I realised that 10:30 or 10 o'clock last night for me would have been 3 a.m. And I don't know if your phone buzzes or anything, because my phone doesn't buzz anymore.
Well, yeah, I don't switch my phone off, but I put it on airplane mode in the night anyway, so I would have got it. Just 1 second. The joy of being a journalist. There's a news story just broken, and I've just filed the story. The editor's just looking at it, so I just got to answer one question quickly.
That's all right.
1 second. Okay. Annoying. Okay, I think that should be done. Can you stop it and restart it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm going to leave that bit in at the beginning as kind of a cold opener, just to show how professional you are, guys.
Okay. I'm completely done with that thing now, so I'm all yours. Apologies for that.
Perfect, mate. Perfect.
Welcome to the Crossing the Pond podcast, hosted by me, Gary Adair, where each week our guests will recount their own experiences of resilience and transformation, whether it's moving to a new country, tackling health challenges, changing careers, or breaking through personal barriers.
My guest this week is Gareth Gore, journalist and author of the critically acclaimed book Opus, but more importantly, an old friend from school. From his working class upbringing in Wigan to the halls of Cambridge University, and then onto the sharp end of financial journalism and best-selling books, he's never truly forgotten where he came from. We talk about the importance of hard work, the class divides as you move through the journalism ranks, friendship, and staying grounded at all times, wherever you are in the world. If you think back, right, mate, what's some of your earliest memories of growing up in Wigan?
I can really quite clearly remember my kind of days at primary school as which is kind of weird because I've now got 3 kids, and the youngest of which is in kind of year 4 at primary school. And I can remember being that age. So it's kind of weird looking at my daughter thinking, wow, like, yeah, that she's already of an age now that she'll remember like when she's much older. But I had a great time I love school, primary school. And I think that's kind of one thing I'm really thankful for, that like the state school system kind of, I did really well by it. Like there were lots of amazing teachers around. Like I remember at primary school, my head teacher kind of took me under his wing, and like he spotted that I was, a bright kid and interested in learning and interested in doing lots of stuff. And so he'd like send extra stuff my way. At one stage, he was trying to get my parents to send me to like a private school on like a scholarship and stuff. Like the way that he like almost went out of his way to like spot this bright kid, and try to like, push him to like do stuff and, make something of his life. And I think that I was lucky enough to have teachers like that all the way through. I mean, it was, I'm really kind of quite thankful to.
And not to sound disrespectful at all, but in the, like, Marsh Green, that part of town, would there have been many kids like you in that place around there at the time? Not, and again, this is not to sound condescending, because it's more a fact of like, as driven to be academic. And I think a lot of us would say the same thing, right? I mean, you're kids at the end of the day, so, you don't identify that quickly. But the fact that someone's picked up on you in primary school and tried to push you.
Yeah, totally. You grew up on the right side of the tracks, I guess. No, you grew up on not quite the posh bit of Wigan, but like, you compared to where I was, there are, the bright kids born and grow up everywhere, right? But like your surroundings, I think in many cases, like condition you to like your expectations of life. And so if people around you, doing well, aren't striving, aren't kind of having opportunities, then you kind of internalize that as a kid, I think. The place that I grew up, or the town that we grew up in the 1980s Wigan, was not a great place, right? Because this was a town that had grown, like lived off mining and like industry. And a lot of that stuff was closing down, certainly on the estate where I was kind of growing up. And I'm sure you saw it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So many people were out of work. There was a drug problem and stuff. And, there was just, kind of, I think it was quite a violent place in some senses as well. Like, because people were angry about, the situations. And so many kids, I think, grew up surrounded by parents, relatives, friends of family who were just all out of work. And so I think, it would have been possible as a kid to have not noticed that. But like, so I think there were potentially lots of other kids, but I guess I was just lucky enough to, and not because I like was trying like especially hard, but I just kind of excelled at school and, from very early on. And the teachers spotted that and kind of marked me out, I guess, for extra work and pushed me to kind of do things. But if I didn't have that push, I mean, my parents, they were both they're both disabled. They like were, my mum quit work to have kids, and my dad, by the time I was about 8 or 9, was kind of too sick to work. So my parents weren't the ones really pushing me to do well. They were very proud of me and like patting me on the back, well done, whatever. But it was the teachers, I think, that were really like, look, have you thought about going on to college and going on to university? And, there's a whole world out there. And, without them, I don't think I would have really realized that, to be honest.
You kind of have your little community, and like you said, I can remember, like, my mum and dad worked a lot, but my mum and dad, obviously coming from Liverpool, my dad worked at Ford's, and my mum, they both worked in Liverpool in nursing and in the trade. But we had friends in the same situation. Like, dads had worked down the pit, and pits were getting closed, and it was a very difficult time. But then all of a sudden we get lumped together at school, albeit we didn't kind of come across each other until later in high school. But what did going to high school and meeting different people from different parts of town do for you? Was it a step up? Was it a little bit more? I don't know. What was it like for you moving to high school?
I think it was, and I'm still, as well as you, I'm still in touch with you. I'm in touch with a bunch of people that I met in high school, and, really good friends with them. Been friends with them for like the last 30 years or whatever. And I met a lot of good kids, but I think, and people that I'm very close to still, but I think it was a weird time for me, actually. Instead of going to the high school, the local high school where all the other kids from the estate where I grew up, where they all went, I was one of like the few kids that picked a school a little bit further away. And that was purely because my cousin went there. And I guess my mum and dad had been told from my auntie that it was a good school. And actually, it wasn't a great school. Like, if you look at the kind of results that came out of it, it was like fairly bottom tier, but it wasn't quite as bad as the school that was. My parents were like, you should go there. And I think I was kind of on board with that as well. But what kind of, because I was maybe only a very few number of people from the council estate where I grew up. I think that was always in the back of my mind. And like, I don't think I've ever said this before, like even to my mates, I didn't really invite any of my mates back to my house because I think I was very much aware that, that a lot of them were from slightly better off families. None of them were like rolling in money or rich or whatever, but the mums and dads had decent jobs. They were teachers or nurses or whatever. And I think I was very conscious of the fact that, they all lived on these kind of in private properties and had cars and had it like it. And we had a clean, loving household, but it was in the middle of this estate that a lot of people looked down on for reasons that I wouldn't necessarily agree with or whatever. But like, so I had this kind of bug on my shoulders, if that's the right term. So whilst I met a lot of great people, and there was always this kind of like feeling of almost needing to like hide where I came from kind of being conscious of the fact that there was a bit of a divide. And obviously compared to the real divides in the world, that was a kind of tiny, tiny thing. But I just, as a kid, I guess you don't always understand these things properly, do you? And like, I don't know, you overthink things, I guess.
No, you're right. I mean, listen, I went to Abram Guest for, I think, a similar reason. Like a lot of people I went to school with went to a different school. And I think, but me going to Abram Guest, I think broadened my spectrum on things a little bit. Just because it's different people from different backgrounds, and it is very different, isn't it? But it is a challenge at the same time. Like, I really struggled in high school because of the way that I spoke, and I got torched for it a lot, and I struggled with it a lot. And it was what kids are like as well. It was an easy way to get after someone, wasn't it? Because of the way they spoke or where they were from or whatever it was. So yeah, no, I can see how it could have been difficult at times.
Well, I guess I was kind of worried of that because I think, kids at that age, when you're in your like early teens, they can be quite cruel. I mean, there's a better awareness these days about like mental health and being respectful of differences and that kind of stuff, which is all great. But kids are kids. And, like if there's anything that people pick up on, then, it becomes like a label. So I guess I didn't want to become the kid from the council estate in the same way that you maybe became the Scouts kid or whatever. No, that was, yes. But yeah. But it's all good. Like, yeah, I'm fine.
Pretty much. So, all right. So we'll stop on school now because we're both going to have PTSD in a minute. Before we jump onto the sort of after college, after high school, after sixth form college stuff, is there anything from the positives from being a Wiganer that you still carry with you now, like little flashbacks to things or whatever it is that still influences how you see the world now?
I think I'd like to say, and maybe my partner and my kids might disagree with this, that I know people that know me quite well. Like, I think it's given me a different perspective on life. I think I'm a bit more, I'd like to think I'm more understanding of like different people, because I've seen through my life, I've come into it, I've interacted with quite a lot of people from very different backgrounds. Like, as I was saying, we grew up on this council estate where, unemployment was rife. There was like heroin problems and all kinds of issues. But like, I knew those people as well. I knew how like they're all, they were decent people deep down. They might have had their problems or whatever, but you shouldn't label people just because they're unemployed or have a drug problem or whatever it might be. And so I think, and like likewise, when I went into uni and came into contact with people who were from like really quite privileged backgrounds and getting to know them closely as well, you realize that they've also got like their own, weights that they carry around, whether, they've got a parent who's an alcoholic or there's like some horrible like rift in the family. And so I guess, I don't know, like, what I'd like to say, like from my time in Wigan and time later, is that just like, not labeling people and having this, like open, seeing people as human beings, I think is what I'd like to say. But also like, it's, I think coming from a place like Wigan it kind of grounds you as well. And you carry it through your life. I mean, I think you would probably disagree. Like, and whenever I go back to Wigan, it's kind of funny because everyone's like, oh, you've lost your accent and, you've been away so long. When I'm here in London or when I go to, like people are like, oh, you quite clearly a northerner. So it's kind of something you carry with you and people, and, I still find myself, people are like, oh, so where are you from? I've not lived in Wigan for 25 years, but I'm still like the lad from Wigan kind of thing to my colleagues here in London and to new people I meet. You're like, oh yeah, I grew up in Wigan or whatever. So it's something that I think I've got like really positive things from my time in Wigan. Absolutely. Including lots of friends, I think this quite healthy perspective on the world, but it's also something that you can't shake off, even if you wanted to. Not that I want to, but I'm always going to be that guy from Wigan.
Yeah. So is that because you sat in the canteen with a pie in between a balm?
I still enjoy a good pie, and I've had several conversations at work about pie balms and pea wet and various other things.
Pea wet I can't get on board with. All right. We'll get away from Wigan for a little bit anyway. So after you go through, we both end up going to Winstanley College. Again, you are a little bit more academic than I am, let's put it that way. And you end up going to Cambridge University. Am I right in saying you went to Keyes College?
Yes, that's right. That is right.
And the only reason I know this, and we'll get to it in a minute, is because when we went down there, that was what we were told to say, so we didn't have to pay to get through the grounds like everybody else. All right, so what was that? Talk us through that process, because again, being from a working class family in a very working class area, and then was there a desire to go to Cambridge? Was that what you wanted to do, or was there a number of places that were on the list?
I mean, again, it all came down to like teachers. So as you were saying, like at high school, kind of perspectives opened a bit. There's a wider range of people there, and once you got to college, that that became even broader as well. Like the in terms of that number of people and types of different backgrounds and stuff. But the teachers, all the way through from primary school, high school, and then in college, they were the ones that were really kind of driving me on. And so, I remember a particular teacher at Winstanley, Mr. Atherton, who was the one who would try and spot bright kids and encourage them to apply to Oxford and Cambridge. And he
never met him.
Yeah, you never met. He actually was one of my teachers. He was the economics teacher, but maybe he didn't. I don't know.
I wasn't on his radar, Gaz. I was not on his radar, mate.
You've done very well for yourself, so you shouldn't, you shouldn't talk yourself down. But yeah, I mean, like, so he was the one that said, like, have you thought about this? He was arranging for kids from our college to go to like open days at Oxford and Cambridge. And when I got there, I mean, I can't remember exactly what I thought, but like, I guess part of me was just like, yeah, why not? I'm going to try to get in here. This is supposed to be the best place to study the subjects I wanted to study, which was English literature. And so yeah, I'm gonna apply. And very, I got in. It was kind of weird though. Yeah, like the whole interview process was just very strange. And
in what way?
Well, I mean, so I remember it was like the middle of winter. It was probably like December time. Put in my application, and I think almost all the kids that apply to go there have got straight A's. And so what they do generally is like interview people to I guess to cut through people who've had help with the personal statements from their parents and their teachers to like get them, one-on-one to talk about themselves. So I was invited down. I think there were two interviews. My first interview was with one of the academics that ran the course in my college, who was a lovely guy, and I'm still in touch with him these days. And that was quite a normal interview, just asking about myself or whatever. And then the second interview was with what they call the director of studies, like the head of English in my college. And I didn't know this at the time, but he was like quite a big, like published poet, quite a big name on campus, and a complete eccentric. So I remember like just sitting down, and his first like question was something like, so Mr. Gore, what is an idea? And I was like completely unprepared for this. I was like, I was expecting him to maybe ask me about books I enjoyed, or like, my coursework in my A levels. And he was like asking me to define like what an idea was. But I guess it was probably from his perspective a way of like cutting through all the kids that had been trained to like answer questions in a certain way. It was like, let's throw this bomb at them that they're not expecting. And I guess I must have given like a decent answer. And then a few weeks later, I got a letter saying, you're given your place.
Do you think that's, I mean, I suppose we'll never know, right, this guy, but do you think that's just because of the upbringing and not being as, I don't know, call it trained or groomed or whatever it is to go to a place like that, and you've just been able to roll with it a little bit?
I don't know. I mean, I think probably, maybe it's possible to like train you for those kinds of questions as well. I don't know. But I mean, I was certainly not expecting it. I don't know. I guess, I mean, I'd like to think I just answered the question well. I can't even remember what my answer was, but yeah. Maybe part of it is just, being forced to think on your feet. I mean, certainly growing up in Wigan.
You had to be fast, mate, because if you weren't fast, you were in trouble.
Exactly. You got to be fast. And like, I think part of being like, also like being a bright kid as well, and potentially being like someone who might get bullied or like mocked or whatever. I think I was always quite good at like having little witty comebacks or trying to be funny and stuff like that. And so like thinking on my feet. So yeah, I mean, maybe that helped me.
Because my point is like, this is almost like a blessing and a curse now. Like I am like that now. If someone says something to me, straight back. And I don't know if that's just the north of England thing, just being ready to get like teased a little bit, and then you've got to be quick enough to get back. But I think that's carried me through a lot of situations. But also at the same time, like, Kel doesn't think like we think. So I kind of have that with her, and it just doesn't work, because it's like, why are you being so aggressive? I'm like, I'm not. I'm just programmed to react in a certain way because I'm waiting for someone to tear strips off me or challenge me on something.
I think that is, I mean, I like to call it a Wigan thing. Maybe it's a general kind of Northern England thing, or maybe it's more like a working class thing. But yeah, I think it's almost like a defense mechanism, right? Of being able to diffuse a situation like through humor or something, or just through some like little witty comments, and something that might be quite tense or awkward suddenly becomes like, more relaxed. Yeah. Let's call it a Wigan thing. That can be.
We'll call it a Wigan thing for the purpose of this one. Yeah. So, all right. So Cambridge comes along, you get yourself down there, and you kind of alluded to it a couple of questions back where you're saying about like when you first meet these people that are there's a clear class difference, call it. Like, how did you manage that when you first got down to Cambridge week one, freshers week, call it?
Well, I mean, I should say as well, like I wasn't the only working class kid there, right? And my like friend group was quite mixed. There were a bunch of people from private school, from quite privileged backgrounds, but also like a bunch of people who were from quite, normal backgrounds, like yours or mine or whatever. But I guess I still kind of had it in the back of my mind. And partly of, I've kind of lost quite a bit of Max, and part of it was my accent. So I remember one of the first like big formal dinners we did, and one of my professors was sat at the table with all the English people, and I said a word in like a really weird way, and they kind of like picked up on it, and we're like almost the whole table was like laughing at this thing, and like, you know, it was, I don't think it was meant in a malicious way or like, and I don't think it was meant to make me feel bad, but it was like, it just kind of, I was very much aware of, I guess, not being the typical maybe Cambridge student or whatever, or not necessarily fitting in with the typical profile of the kids that went to my college. But I mean, there were other silly things as well, right? I mean, like, I remember like, so there were various like clubs that started up, and some of them were like invitation only, and all the private school kids would get invited along, and, I wouldn't get a look in. And, and even some of the events that were organized by some of the academic staff as well. I remember, there was this kind of like, not quite a debating society, but there was like a society set up where they would talk about interesting things, and it all be sat around, over dinner. A bunch of my mates got invited to it because they were from like the right backgrounds, but I was just like kind of left to. Yeah.
Serious? I didn't know that.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. There was this. I mean, I don't know what it's like these days. I suspect it's much better these days, but like, I was certainly kind of excluded from certain stuff, and there was very much like a kind of a class divide that kind of was, tore right through the university. And if you were on the wrong side of that, then you just were excluded from certain things and from certain kind of groups. Yeah, I think it's probably much, much better these days.
Was there a moment for you during that time? Because listen, guys, let's not lie to ourselves here. Like, you've done very well for yourself as far from a career standpoint. But was there a point at Cambridge or a particular person that helped maybe break down that wall or bridge that gap and get you into things that maybe encouraged you to move forward and put you on the map, so to speak? Was there anyone in particular or any moment in particular that sort of fueled it?
I think less so at Cambridge. I think the real kind of change in my mindset came through, as I was saying before, my teachers at primary school, high school, and college, who were like, you're bright, you can go far if you work hard, and there are all these opportunities open to you. I think by the time I kind of got to Cambridge, and this is maybe kind of a slightly kind of arrogant thing to say, but I think it's what people, a lot of people think when they get to Cambridge. Once you've got to Cambridge, you're almost like, I've made it. I've made it to like one of the top tier universities. Whatever I do after this is, I think a lot of people think, I'm going to walk into a job. But I think having kind of already got in, I kind of knew that, the range of opportunities open to me would certainly be that much greater because I got Oxford or Cambridge on my CV. Things didn't necessarily work out that way. And I think, I think for many people, like leaving like Oxford and Cambridge is a bit of a wake up call when you get into the real world, and actually people are like, oh, it's great that you went to this university, but they don't really give a damn because they want someone who can do a good job and who's hardworking, and what university you've gone to is not really top of the list of things. So I think at uni, there wasn't any particular personal moments that really kind of, opened my eyes to opportunities or whatever. But what I would say is that I think, that broke down the barriers is, I guess what you're asking about. But I think, like I said, I had a very good, healthy friend group that was a real mix of people. So I guess in terms of like breaking down barriers within my friend group, I don't think there were really any barriers, or they were very kind of small. By the time I got to Cambridge, I was kind of much more confident in myself, and certainly kind of by the time we got to like the second and third year. And so if someone wanted to look down on me or didn't want to invite me into their group, I would just think, well, F you, like, whatever. So yeah, I think by that stage I've become I guess, more confident and
Yeah, just roll with the knocks. Okay, so talk about your friend group that you develop out down there. How does that mesh with the friend group that actually came down to visit you in Cambridge from Wigan?
So you're talking here about the famous or infamous visit that you guys. So look, I mean, I think it was the end of the first year or something. That how many of you was it? Maybe 5 or 6 of my old Wigan mates, including yourself, Gary, came down to Cambridge, and that was a bit of a, I love you guys, and we had a great time, but it was a weird couple of days for me because it was like the meeting of these two worlds. And I think there were kind of lots of just like silly things. Like I remember we went to like Formal Hall, which is something I had to go to almost every night with like wearing a gown to have dinner and stuff. And
it was like Hogwarts, wasn't it?
It was a bit like Hogwarts, yeah. But because I'd done it every single day, I didn't really think much of it. But then when you've got all your mates coming down who are like, sitting down and looking around and just like, what the hell is this? It kind of makes you more, I guess, it makes you realize that it's just still a bit weird. But there was, you were all like served dinner. I remember one moment where one of our friends who likes his food, I think he'd got a plate like put in front of him and he saw that they were still coming with more plates. And so he like hid his plate. And so he could get a second one. I was like, mate, you don't have to do that, like if you want some more food, you just need to ask. It's totally fine. So yeah, I mean, so it was, but it was a fun weekend. I enjoyed it.
I remember that. And then the one about going through Keys College, because you told us that it was £2 every time you had to go through?
Oh yeah, because
people would come up to you. Yeah, they charge you. People would come up to you.
So I was just like, obviously didn't want you guys to get charged for like wandering through different colleges or whatever. And so I was just like, just tell them you're at Keys. So yeah, which worked.
Yeah. You've got people just going through. Yeah, we're at Keys, mate.
And what are they going to say? And it's, they're not going to say, oh, you're too working class to be here. No, like it's, you've got the wrong accent.
They didn't want to ask any questions. So talk us through after Cambridge then, because we can get to Spain, but because point is you end up in Bilbao eventually, right? You end up in Spain eventually. What's the timeline between Cambridge and Bilbao? Because that's kind of the time when I came over here. So I'm not as well up on that.
So look, I mean, I knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to be a journalist. I remember even when I was at school, like I was trying to, organizing work experience at the local radio station, Rock FM. I went to Key 103, did work experience there. And that didn't change all the way through college and uni as well. So when I got to my final year, I started applying for a couple of jobs. And there was one particular scheme, like Reuters, big news agency, had this graduate scheme. And I remember getting quite far in the process. It was really quite competitive. And, I was, like so close to getting a job and then didn't. I still wanted to be a journalist, but didn't have a job. And then I met this girl from Spain. Incidentally, in Germany, I went to visit a friend of mine who was living in Berlin. She was doing like her Erasmus year, and my current partner was friends with her in Berlin, and we met on a night out, and we got together, and and she came to visit me in Cambridge. I went back to visit her in Berlin. This was in the middle of like preparation for my finals as well. I remember my mates going, what the hell are you doing? You're going to like Berlin for 10 days in the middle of like your revision period for your finals. But I don't know. I guess I just want, and so and things kind of started to develop with this girl. I didn't have a job for the next year, and she had to go back to Spain to complete her studies, her final year at uni. And so I just decided, you know what? Why don't I just move to Spain and see if things work out with her? And like, if they do, great. If they don't, I'm in Spain. Like, like I can.
And this is straight after college, straight after uni.
This is straight after uni, yeah, basically.
See, I didn't realize that. Just to put this, just before we get into it, you speak a number of languages, right, Gaz?
I speak Wiganese. Like I speak English. I speak Spanish. So I speak a tiny bit of German.
So you have to tell me the chat up line in Spanish.
It was in English because she was like at this stage. So I only learned any Spanish after I met her when I moved to Spain. So I arrived in Spain with about 10 words. When I met her, we were talking in English. So there was
All right.
sorry to disappoint you. Not that you need it as well, because you're married to the lovely Kelly, but it's yeah. I mean, but I'm sorry, I can't provide you or your listeners with a.
But then again, I would imagine that "or eat love" translates in
Or eat
every
love.
language.
Of course. So for me, it was kind of, I've got nothing to lose. I'd go and live in a foreign country, maybe learn a bit of the language, experience a bit of the culture, and hey, maybe it'll work out with this girl, maybe it won't, but like, I'm gonna have fun along the way. And somehow I convinced you, and I met Russell to join me, right? Although it didn't quite go to.
I was booked on the plane with Russell to come, and I got offered a job over here, so I came over here, didn't I? But talk about that as an absolute sliding doors moment for me. That
the way I remember it is that you met some girl. I think
there was a bit of that. I'd like to think it's because I got offered a job, Gaz. Yeah, cheers for stitching. I'll leave it in, but yeah, you've absolutely stitched me there as well. But yeah, it was definitely because of a job, Gareth. Let's just get that one out there, really.
Sorry.
But so I've got a couple of questions about the journalism, but I'm going to stay on the Spain thing. Like, so you've gone into another environment now where you're a little bit out of your comfort zone, living in Bilbao. And again, Basque Spain is a lot different from Spain.
Yeah. This was Bilbao, and yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Completely out of my comfort zone. And I think even more than Cambridge, much more than Cambridge, because I couldn't even express myself or speak to people, right? So I remember going for like family and Spanish families, and especially the family that I kind of found myself in, this kind of huge extended families that would have all of these gatherings, like meals and like meet for drinks or meet for whatever. And so I was constantly going to all of these kind of family events where there was maybe, out of maybe like 20, 30 people in the room, was maybe one or two people who spoke English. And so I was very much kind of like in kind of deep water. But I also had a great time. I mean, you may have ditched us, but me and Russell came over, and he stayed for a few months, and we had a great time. And yeah, and like by the end of the year, I kind of got decent Spanish. I was teaching English there and stuff. Yeah, I'm so pleased I did it. I mean, it was a real kind of baptism of fire. But like, and obviously I have a lot to thank my partner for. Like Maita was, was the reason I went and the reason I stayed, and she was very patient with me, I guess, whilst
and probably still is, Gaz,
constantly between what I was saying and communicating it to her family and stuff. And obviously her, parents were also like super welcoming.
I often wonder if I'd have gone and taught English there, and it would have been like sort of like a Scouse Wiganese Good Morning Vietnam, where you'd have like all these Spanish residents speaking in some twisted language. They'd all be going to England looking for jobs, going, all right, mate. And
we used to make that joke. Russell and myself used to joke about that. How there'd be like a whole new generation of Bilbao kids who'd be walking around going, all right.
Oh, it's hilarious. No, it's good. So at the time, did you kind of look into the journalism opportunities while you were away, spending that time in Spain, or was that just put on pause for the time being?
I guess it was kind of on pause, but I guess part of the way through the year, myself and my partner kind of decided that London was somewhere we wanted to maybe. So she applied to a master's course in London, and she got in, and I decided, I guess maybe I've been applying for some journalism jobs. I can't remember properly, but maybe not really getting anywhere. And I think I kind of realized that maybe doing a journalism master's was maybe a way of like, kind of beefing up my CV and having a better chance of getting a job. And so when she got into this master's, I applied to a different master's to do journalism at City University in London. And so, yeah, I mean, basically after a year in Spain, after she completed her studies, we then went traveling for the whole summer. We did the Trans-Mongolian Railway from Beijing to St. Petersburg over the summer. And then we came back to Bilbao briefly, and then we basically packed everything up and moved to London for the first time, where a lot of my friends from Cambridge were already kind of getting established. they'd moved there straight from uni, and some of them had grown up in London as well. And so we knew a bunch of people who were already there. And yeah, like 20 years on, I'm still in London.
But that's a nice little soft landing for you, isn't it? After all of that as well, like these constant shifts going to places where you are out of your comfort zone. It must have been a nice little softer landing for you getting back to London, around somewhat familiar places, even in a big city.
I think it was for the first year because I was back in like education. So like, I knew what I was doing for the first year back. I was just, attending university, doing the courses, doing the, various assignments or whatever. So I think, yeah, it's right to say it was kind of, I guess, easier for the first year. But then I think for me, the more difficult moment came when university ended and I got this master's that was meant to help me get a job in journalism. And then it was like, okay, shit, what do I do now? And how do I get a decent job and the rest of it? And so like, I had a few months where I was unemployed and basically applying to every single journalism job I could find and just getting rejection after rejection after rejection. And so that was, so yeah, maybe it was kind of slightly easier after the kind of Spain experience. But then after that master's, yeah, there was a few months where it was like tricky to be in London and pay the bills, pay the rents, which are, were clearly much cheaper than they are today, but at the time felt like, hugely expensive as well. So, and again, Maita was the one who supported me through that because she very quickly got a job. And so she was paying the bills whilst I was sat at home applying to various jobs or saying I was applying to various jobs.
On the journalism thing, Gaz, saying you were watching Richard and Judy and just drinking tea and stuff. But so on the subject of the journalism, obviously you're involved, you're heavily involved, you're heavily committed to it because you're applying for these jobs and you're not buckling, you're trying to get the perfect job. Can you remember was there a story or something that gripped you when it comes to journalism, like early on, maybe it was as a kid, maybe as you moved through the stages in college, that that gripped you into it and thought, yeah, this is for me, this is what I want to get involved in?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I was just always a bit of a news junkie, I guess. Even from an early age, I can remember like being at my granny's house and like the TV being on. And I don't know whether this is kind of like some memory that I formed later that's a false one, but like I can almost remember like the Berlin Wall, images of the Berlin Wall kind of falling and stuff. So I was always kind of in love with the news. And like I said, like when I was at high school, I was applying to do work experience at local radio stations, and they were very kind, let me come in and like do some proper, help out the proper journalists and do some proper interviews with people, write some stuff. It was really good. I was kind of a bit of a weirdo as well because I remember on the estate I grew up, everyone read like the Sun or the Mirror or the Star or whatever. There were maybe a few slightly more right-wing people who maybe read the Express or the Mail or something. But it was, and I knew this because I had a paper round, so I was delivering everyone's newspapers. I was so into the news that I was like, I persuaded my parents to like buy the Times every day, as well as my dad read the Mirror, but I persuaded, so they bought to go to the newsagent and specifically order the Times because no one else
one copy
wanted the Times, and that was Gareth's copy at the time. And like, so from the age of about 14, 15, I was like, reading the paper every day. I think later I persuaded them to like get a copy of like The Economist or something once a week or whatever like that. And so like, yeah, I know. But like, it was always, I always knew. I mean, I was very lucky in that sense. I don't know how it was for you, but like, I knew from like my early teens, like I want to be a journalist. I want to work in news. I don't know whether you had the same kind of.
No, my thing was always, I just wanted to be something to do with football, but that's become an absolute curse to me. Do you know what I mean? Because I've constantly bing looking for something. I feel like my identity is just around football, which I'm trying to kind of shake off a little bit because it's going to put me in the ground. I know it is because I'm just constantly looking for the next opportunity. But you're constantly moving. Like if you look at your CV, you visited over 25 countries doing different reporting on different things. Was that always a thing to travel and report, or were you more of like? Because I never saw you as like, I'm thinking about Ricky Gervais on Afterlife, if you've seen that, like the local reporter that just does little bits of news. But have you always been sort of intrigued by the broader scope of what's out there just to to report back on, or is that just kind of something you fell into?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I've always been a bit kind of obsessed with the kind of the world out there kind of thing. I think, I can remember like watching like what was then like the 9 o'clock news when I was a kid, and just seeing like, reports from Uganda or Romania or China or whatever, and just thinking, like, and I remember loving like the Michael Palin like travel shows. So I think, I've always had this travel bug, and like, I remember I took a gap year between college and university, and I spent a month in Germany just traveling around on my own. And then I went to the States for a little while. But then, ever since then, I've had this kind of travel bug. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I've reported from 25 countries as part of my job, but I've probably traveled to like maybe 50 countries or something like that. And some of them quite random as well. I remember we once went on holiday to Georgia and Armenia. And
Holiday.
on holiday, yeah. Well, in fact, I mean, what? I mean, last summer we took the kids on holiday to Colombia, and a lot of people are like, Colombia? We had a great time. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get my kids into it as well, and they're very, they're very good travelers. But like, I mean, I love traveling, and I love seeing other parts of the world, talking to people, and not just as a journalist, but like, I guess I'm just like curious about the wider world. And, I hope I'll never stop traveling. Like, I'd love to do more of it. In fact,
we've always been like a traveling group as well, haven't we? Like it's not like, yeah, all right, we do the annual Tenerife run or whatever, like when you were younger, but we've always been to places, haven't we? Like as a group or as friends, we'd always go, like we went to Amsterdam when we were 17.
Well, yeah, precisely. And I think a lot of the kids that we went to college with were like, what? We've heard you guys are going to like Amsterdam, right? And like, surely that's just a rumor or whatever. But I know, no, we are. I don't know. Like, I think and like we as a friend group just, I guess, had this like can-do attitude of like, oh, we quite fancy going to Amsterdam. Let's just book some flights and go. Like, I think I've been that way all the way through my life. Like, let's just do it. Let's just go for it. No one's going to hand these things to you on a silver platter. So you've just got to grasp at these things and you've just got to do it, right?
I think so. I mean, there's nothing more enlightening than going to seeing the red light district as a 17-year-old.
Not that we did anything at all. I mean, we're just like kind of, oh my goodness, like
I think we went to a steakhouse and then we just walked around with our heads down, going, "Oh God, this is mental." Just fully paranoid without even doing anything.
Yeah. But it was, but they're all these like formative experiences. Like we had a great time that weekend. Or in fact, one of our mates, it's coming back to like kind of, I guess, being allowed to go and stuff. One of our mates hadn't even told his mum that he was going to Amsterdam. No, I remember on our first night there, he called her up from a restaurant in the middle of Amsterdam saying, well, and it was from a payphone as well, I think, because I think no one had a mobile. And he was like, Mum, remember when I said I was going to the supermarket? Well, I'm actually in Amsterdam.
I'm in Amsterdam, and your car's in a car park at Manchester Airport because he forgot his pass, because he didn't realise you needed a passport to go to Holland.
Yeah,
he had to run back and get it.
I mean, in that sense, I guess you're quite similar in this as well. Just quite thankful to my parents for just like giving me put me on quite a long leash to just do. I guess they just trusted me for whatever reason. I'd like to think I'm going to be the same with my kids. I mean, we'll see. But my kids are now getting to an age where my eldest is 14. And so I'm quite aware of what I was up to at 14. So I'm like, yeah.
Well, yeah, the world's a different place now, though, isn't it, for things like that? Yeah. Especially at 4. Like you talked then about not having a mobile in Amsterdam. Can you imagine that now?
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't even be a thing. So I don't know if you want to talk about this, guys. Just maybe briefly touch on the book. I don't want to go crazy on it. Like, it doesn't have to be an in-depth thing, but I think it's worth mentioning. But like, did you, because you kind of fell into investigative journalism with a financial angle on it. Like, is that something that you gravitated towards, or was that something that you just, I don't know, fell upon?
When I decided I wanted to become a journalist, I didn't have a dream of like becoming a financial journalist. And, I guess I had this dream of becoming like some big correspondent for like the Times or whatever who would like, like travel the world and, very unrealistic ambitions probably. But at the time, I mean, it's even worse these days, but even in the early 2000s, like the newspaper industry was going through like a really hard time. Like there were very few good jobs. But the one area where there were decent jobs was financial journalism. There was a decent number of jobs. You had good resources. You could travel and, do proper reporting, and you were paid like, okay money, rather than the peanuts that were being offered by a lot of the big newspapers and stuff. And so I just fell into it. But I kind of really took to it, and I guess turned out to be quite decent at it. And, fast forward to 2019, when I kind of basically stumbled upon this kind of crazy story of this bank in Spain that collapsed, and it turned out that this kind of crazy Catholic cult was controlling it and siphoning off all this money. I've always had a decent nose for a story, and I just found this story and was like, this is an incredible story. I've got to tell this in some way. And I knew that the magazine I work for wasn't going to really be really that interested in it, because it's not really, the kind of stuff it covers. So I kind of approached like the New Yorker and asked if they might, be interested in me writing this about it, and didn't really go anywhere. And I just decided, I mean, it's this attitude that I was talking about before of like, this can-do attitude. I was just like, well, maybe I should write a book. And so I then set about finding out how it is that you go, somebody ends up writing a book. So I found an author that lives locally and asked them to explain the process to me of how you get an agent and how you get a book deal and stuff. And I worked like crazy on it, like in my spare time. I was still doing my day job, but I worked like crazy on it for like about 3 years on the proposal, and eventually got a book deal with Simon & Schuster. And yeah, the book came out in 2024 called Opus. You don't need to go and buy it. You don't need to, I'm sure it's still sitting on your bookshelf. No, it's...
No, you know what? You know what's funny? I didn't buy it, but I bought it for my father-in-law, and he read it.
Oh,
and
really?
He's read it from cover to cover.
And he's not spoken to you since, no?
Well, he's quite a clever chap. He said it's written. His words are, it's very scholarly written, is what his words were to me.
Okay, I would argue the opposite. I would argue it's kind of written for like a wider audience.
I would disagree, because I think Kel did about 4 pages of it and was like, oof. I was like, we'll skirt around it, but we'll also dip into it as well. Like, what's the process for financial journalism? Is it different from anything else, or is it the same sort of thing? You do your background. Is it the same process for everything? It's just the subject matter is different?
It's the same as any journalism job, right? I mean, so it's basically, you're trying to find stuff out that isn't already out there, and you're trying to break news. You're trying to write interesting stories that haven't already been written and about interesting stuff. And so it's just being curious, I guess, about the world and looking at what's going on, spotting interesting trends and interesting things, and then talking to as many people as possible and trying to convince them to open up to you and tell you stuff and the rest of it. I mean, that's kind of the job of a journalist. And then trying to, and writing that down. And yeah, I mean, it's a job I love. I mean, I basically get paid for just finding shit out and like
gossiping.
Yeah, I mean, like asking people questions, trying to get to the bottom of what's really going on, and yeah, I mean, like it's a great job. I mean, it has its frustrations and the rest of it, but like I think it is a really great job. I mean, unfortunately, I think these days there are very few good journalism jobs still out there, especially outside of financial journalism. It's kind of an industry that's kind of dying a little bit, which is very sad, because, it's such an important thing to find out the truth and like get people to realize what's really going on and the rest of it, hold people to account. But yeah, I mean, I love the job, and I love writing the book as well. I mean, it was a lot of fun is the wrong word, because it's quite like, I don't want to play down the kind of material and kind of, it touches on abuse and all kinds of like horrible stuff. But like, I thoroughly enjoyed like researching and writing it. Watch this space. Maybe there'll be another one.
Well, it's a passion, isn't it? It's a passion project as well. I mean, the fact that it's been so well received, right? And did you get to a point in that process where, I mean, first of all, just to put it in context again, if people don't know, you literally went into a financial institute or did some digging on a financial institution in Spain that went down, and then you start uncovering this other thing, this other side to it. Was there a point where you're like, this is massive, this is huge, the implications of this and everything else, the knock-on effects are absolutely massive?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there were a number of moments where I'm just like, shit, this is an incredible story. But like, as a journalist, when you kind of, lots of people have asked me because, there's like this abusive cult involved, and they have this quite false reputation, I think, of being like, murdering people and like killing people off and whatever. And a number of people have said, but weren't you scared? Like, were you like worried about putting this book out and putting your name on it? But honestly, as a journalist, when you stumble upon like an incredible story, your first and only instinct is, I have to tell this story. I've got to like share this story with the world. So you don't think about potential implications for you. And, Opus Dei have come after me. They've tried to discredit me. They've called me a liar. They've like this whole campaign to like
Cockroach, I believe one of the words was, Gaz.
Yeah, all kinds of like, all kinds of abuses come my way. But like, you don't think about any of that at the time. And I wouldn't change a thing. Like, as a journalist, you find a good story, you just have to tell it. Yeah. So in fact, just before I came on here, I was just writing a story, and, like when shit happens, you just have to write and get it out there. So yeah, I think,
so again, not trying to blow more smoke, but there's been, you have had, it has been received well, hasn't it? And you've had some critical acclaim, and it's generated a lot of discussion of a lot of different platforms, and some of that's come back to you, and some of it's out there for everyone to see, really. But what's been the most surprising or meaningful reaction that you've had from it?
I mean, like, I think most authors would say the reviews and the critics, they don't really matter. But that's a complete lie. It's because, I was working on this on my own for like 3 years of like putting a proposal together, then like another 2 years of actually kind of writing the book. And you're working in like this vacuum, and you're liaising with your editor, and maybe Miter was like reading different, lots of pages and stuff. And you're getting a bit of feedback. When the book's finally out there, and you get like reviews in places like, the Washington Post and the Financial Times and stuff like that, they're all saying this is a great book, we love it, it's thoroughly researched, really well written. Those were kind of special moments for me, I think. And also, occasionally I might dip into the reviews on Amazon, and it's, if you need a little boost, it's kind of nice to be able to see all these like hundreds of reviews from people, and like saying, how much they enjoyed it. There were a couple of reviews as well from people I suspect are part of Opus Dei who kind of disparage the book. It's kind of weird. Like I'd say like 80% of the reviews are like 5 stars, and about 10% are like 1 star. Is like and like a bit in between. And you're like, yeah. So no, but I think that was quite a special moment to be working on this project for quite some time, put a lot of effort into it, and then to have like, professional reviewers come out and say, this is a really good book. I think that was special.
So what are you planning next? Or are we not allowed to know?
Lunch, I think, is next.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! Yeah, breakfast for me, mate. I got bags under my eyes, like getting on the phone at 7 o'clock in the morning is mental.
Well, I've recently started this kind of semi-new job, this new beat, I should say, like inside the magazine where I work. So I'm kind of writing about Silicon Valley at the moment, and all the money that's kind of being plowed into like AI and stuff like that. And in fact, I'm going out to California in a few weeks to like meet people and interview people and stuff like that, which is probably like the hottest story in the world right now, is all of this AI and all the money that's going into it and stuff. I'm a bit of a skeptic. I mean, my attitude is like, I'm going to follow the story on the way up, and then when it all comes crashing down, I'm going to be there to like tell that story as well. So that's my day to day. And you know what? I'm always on the hunt for like new stories. And so who knows, maybe at some stage there'll be another book. I'm not yet like set on a particular idea, but I'm always sniffing around and looking at stuff, and and also like, a bit of breaking news. Well, so there's a documentary coming out about my book as well, and we are currently negotiating a deal with a big TV company to make it into like a series. So watch this space, I guess.
That would be good, Gaz. I just red carpet access will do for me. That's all right. Me and Kel, I'll get me tux on.
Well, look, you guys got a mention in the acknowledgements for putting me up in New York when I was.
We did, yeah, which has probably put me on a hit list now, hasn't it? So, that's good. Thanks for that, mate. I'm going to get Salman Rushdie going down to the shops for a bag of sugar or something. Just tie it all back to us and where we're from. Like, is there ever, when you make these decisions about what you're going to take on, I know a lot of the adrenaline kicks in about this is going to be a mega story, but do you ever circle back to, back to Wigan or back to high school or back to some of those moments where like younger Gaz talks to you and say, this is what we wanted kind of thing?
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe. I mean, I think, I still go back to Wigan, and whenever I go back there, and especially when I kind of visit, my mum and dad are no longer around, but like when I visit like, my aunt and stuff like that and see, wider family, you do think back to those days. And especially when I meet up with my mates and stuff. Do I ever wonder what the younger Gareth would make of this? I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't know. I find all of that a bit like almost better not to think about, because I just, now I'm in my mid 40s. I'm like, it just makes me feel old when I think to, a Gareth 30 years ago or more or whatever. Yeah, I'd like to think you'd be happy with the way things are. But yeah, I don't know. What would your younger Gaz think about it?
He'd say, to be fair, for me, yeah, but there's levels, Gaz. Come on now. There's levels. My younger self would probably be like, all right, good job. You got out. You've done all right for yourself. Stop being so stressed about everything. But I'm sure I'll look back hopefully in 20 years and go, all right, yeah, you did all right there. But I'd like to think that younger me would just say, yeah, you're doing all right. You're in America. You've been there for a while. So that's good enough. You're still involved in football.
I guess there's also like, not to make this like too deep's the wrong word, but like I think there's a certain, like, I think what the kind of forces that pushed us to look outside of, the place that we grew up, and the forces that pushed us to like, to move forward in like our careers and to maybe like take these leaps that other people might have, thought twice about or whatever. It's the thing that's, you can't shake it off, and it's kind of always driving you along. So I guess no matter how well you do, and like, we both have like quite comfortable lives, I'm sure, and we've done quite well for ourselves. But there's always something inside that you're like, and I guess this is maybe why you're doing the podcast as well, and like why I'm looking for new ideas for books and things. I mean, it's the drive kind of never goes away to like just keep looking for new opportunities, and not necessarily searching for something better, because just looking for new stuff to do, I guess. So yeah, I don't know, and maybe that's not a great thing, because maybe you should be able to just occasionally just like put your feet up and relax and enjoy what you've got, instead of like, oh, maybe I could do that, or maybe I could do that. You with your podcast, I mean, this is like in addition to your day job, and if I'm doing another book proposal, that's in addition to what I'm doing for my day job. Why bother with these additional stresses when you should just enjoy what you've got? But I guess it's built into us, right?
You know what? You're dead right, mate. You've summed it up perfectly there. Like, I'm always looking for something else. And I would like to think, and I suppose this is the biggest question, at what point do we get to when we actually do take a step back and go, all right, enough's enough. That's good.
Maybe when the doctor says, you've just had a heart attack. Now it's time to...
When you wake up after getting revived, you're like, yeah, okay, maybe it's time to take a breath here, take a beat. All right, couple of things left. If you had to sum up your journey from Wigan, Cambridge, Spain, now London, what's one thing that's never changed about you? I have an answer for this.
The receding hairline, I guess.
You're still a tight ass. You won't tip.
Yes, I absolutely am still a tight ass. Although I seem to remember that when I was in New York, I took you out for a meal to say thank you.
You did, but this is after the fact. This was more, I think it was more an apology than a thank you, because the time before, you left me in a Thai restaurant in the East Village with no tip on a $150 bill.
That was jet lag.
We were getting chased down the street by this poor Thai woman. Oh my God. I've never been so mortified in my life. I got this, Gary. I'll get this. Yeah, okay, yeah, cool.
In my defense. So yeah, I think we met up with Gary And we went out for dinner and we were like, oh yeah, we'll get this. But I think we'd literally just arrived that day on the plane. And I just like saw the bill for whatever it was, $100. And I was like, I just left $100 on the table, not even thinking. It was like, yeah. And then, yes, we were basically chased down the street by not chased. We were, the waiter
Politely
came.
asked. We were politely asked. Yeah, exactly.
I apologized profusely and gave him some extra money to say thank you for, I didn't mean to not leave a tip. So
Yeah.
yes. But yeah, but I am a tight ass as well.
Yeah, true. That's fair. All right, couple more. 25 years time. Hopefully you took a step back. Someone writes about your story. What would you like someone to say about you 25, 30 years down the line?
Oh, you put me on the spot there now.
Of all the questions, I didn't give you any questions before this, and this is the one that puts you on the spot.
I would say, I'd like to say that he kind of, lived life to the full and took the opportunities that came to him and kind of grasped life and kind of squeezed as much as he could out of it. I think I'd like to say, but also, I mean, hopefully, I'd like to say that kind of my kind of origin story, I hate to call it that, but I'd like to think that my origin story is like irrelevant these days and that everyone is, that opportunities are much greater for working class kids and kids from underprivileged backgrounds or minorities, whatever. But unfortunately, I don't think that's true. I think, in some ways, it's gotten worse for, kids. I think, back then, like I said, I have a lot to thank my teachers for. I'm sure there are lots of great teachers these days, but I think teachers are under so much pressure to like every minute of their day is like accounted for and whatever. I think, it's teachers maybe don't quite have as much time to really push the kids that need it and almost take kids under the wing that might need taking under the wing. And so like, I guess, I'd hope my story might be irrelevant in 25 years and that, people are given the opportunities that kind of equal opportunities. But I think, hopefully, if my story is still necessary, I hope people will take from it that, it doesn't matter where you come from or, where you grew up or whatever. If you work hard and you're lucky, because, luck is a massive part of life and everything, right? I mean, the book, finding that story was partly down to luck and, the jobs I've got into partly down to luck of, the right boss at the right time who decides to like take a chance on me or whatever. Luck is a massive part of life, but it's, I'd still like to think that to give the message to kids that, look, if you work hard at you do your best at school, work hard, you're dedicated, then you can achieve whatever you want to achieve.
It's quite good, that, Gaz. Off the cuff. Not bad. Proper journalist. All right, last thing. What you're most proud of to this point?
What am I most proud of? I don't know. Like maybe the book. I don't know. Having survived in journalism for like 20 years when the industry is like falling to pieces. I don't know. Like, and I think I also proud of like how proud I knew my parents were of me and stuff. Like my parents were always like super supportive. The worlds that I went into, like even sixth form college was a completely alien world to my parents. Both of them like left school with like 0 qualifications straight into like factory work. I think, but even when I went into these kind of really unfamiliar worlds for them, like, first college, then university, and then moving to Spain and London, they were always super open, super supportive and constantly told me how proud they were of me. And so like, they're no longer around, but I'm really proud of the fact that I made them proud and made them happy and stuff. So yeah, I think that's something
That's good enough, Gaz.
Yeah. Let's stop there before
you start crying before lunch. Listen, mate, thank you. That was brilliant. I appreciate the time. I know it's lunchtime for you, but it's early in the morning for me, but I do appreciate, mate. And I really hope people who we know, who we went to school with, listen to this as well, because it's a little bit of insight into your little journey up to this point, mate.
I dread to think the comments that are going to appear underneath this.
I am. What are you more scared of, the comments on this or the comments on Amazon?
Sure.
Oh, it'll be amazing. It'll be the text messages you get and the Facebook messages you get. All right, yeah. So, true fashion. I've got the quick fire questions for you, Gaz. You don't get any time to think about these. To be fair, you didn't listen to any. I didn't give you any questions. You just answered everything off the cuff anyway. All right. First thing you do when you go back to Wigan.
Usually get the bus. Like that.
You're such a tit.
First thing I do when I go out to Wigan is reach out to my mates, to my old school friends, and arrange to go and have a pint. Yes.
Okay. Pie shop. Pools or green algaes?
Slightly controversially, I always preferred the pies from like the old bakery up at Oral Post. I'm not sure whether they're still around.
I don't know if it's still there, but I know exactly what you mean.
Back in the day, I mean, before that was at high school, I discovered that. But I guess more pools, I guess, when growing up.
Okay. Go-to karaoke song.
And I'm a terrible singer. Like you don't want to hear me. I don't have one.
All right. This is more current.
I'm a massive Pulp fan, so maybe Common People. That kind of fits the theme of today's episode as well, I guess.
Go-to dance move. You're on video as well, so you're welcome to showcase it, even the top half or something. Yeah, this is the hands, isn't it? How many fights have we nearly got into because of your erratic dance moves? That's a good question.
I mean, what can I say? It's completely unintentional. I just can't control my limbs.
Yeah, you can't cage that animal. All right. One sporting, and I know you're not the sportiest person in the world, Gaz, but one sporting event that you'd still love to attend.
I'm a big F1 guy, as I know you are as well. F1 is absolutely.
So what's one race that you want to go to that you haven't been to yet?
I was very lucky enough to get invited through work to sit in the pits on a practice day at the British Grand Prix in the Mercedes pits. I met like Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg and other people. I would love to be there on race day, like British Grand Prix in the pit lane on race day. I would love that. So if any big company sponsors are watching and we want to invite this random journalist to come along, then I'll be there.
Shameless. Absolutely shameless. All right. A place that you've traveled to that everyone should visit.
Oh, wow. Wigan. Well, apart from Wigan, London is amazing, the center of the world. But I don't know, like I haven't been for quite a few years, but like China is a fascinating place, and places
Really?
like as well. Yeah, and places like India as well. Like, yes, I mean, it's a real eye-opening place. You see immense wealth, immense poverty, different ways of doing things. Let's say India.
All right. Favorite Spanish phrase.
Favorite Spanish phrase? It would probably be a swear word, to be honest, because like the Spanish are notorious swearers. It's funny. My partner, when she speaks in English, hardly swears at all. But whenever she talks in Spanish, every third word is a swear word. So maybe like joder, which is like a bloody, almost like a bloody kind of yeah.
All right. And then the favorite Wiganese phrase.
I don't know, like all right. I guess all right kind of does it, because it kind of all right. Kind of covers it.
All right. I always say put wood in thole. That's the one that I always put wood in thole.
Another one
which basically means shut the door.
I don't really know that one, to be honest.
Never heard that one.
Not really, no. But one I like as well is high and easy, which is like, it's like, it's agreeing, but more than agreeing. I'll definitely, yeah. High and easy.
That's a good one. High and easy. And then the last question. Are you going to give me credit for redeveloping your image after shaving your head?
Of course. Well, I think I should turn the tables and ask you the question of, did you ever feel any remorse or guilt for pinning me down and shaving off my luscious locks?
Mate, honestly,
which I've been unable to go back since.
That you look like Postman Pat. I'm absolutely happy that I did it. But not only did I do it to you and it revolutionized your image, it also inspired me to do mine eventually down the line.
For context, people that may not know this story, but when I went to a party when I was about maybe 19, with Gary and a bunch of other mates, and for months, years, they've been trying to convince me to shave off my hair because I was, already receding even from like 16, 17. And they're like, Gaz, you just got to shave it off. It's going to look so much better. And they took matters into their own hands. And Gary was the man with the clippers, I believe. I remember that day. Went to a party that night and went back home, woke up in my bed the next morning, realizing that my head had been shaven and realizing I had to go downstairs to like my parents and explain what had happened. But they were cool about it. They were fine.
You can blame Kate Smythe because I'm sure her old man had a baldy head as well, so he used clippers. So
you must have taken his clippers, right?
Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah,
the house with clippers.
I think her ma was funny as well. Her ma was a good laugh, wasn't she? So she basically gave them to us and said, "Go on, get after him."
I think she felt awful about it afterwards.
But then she's now look at you now, God, flourishing.
I've never looked back. I've not changed the look since. Although I've not really had any to check.
No, it worked. Hey, listen, it worked on your missus, so you're welcome. You're welcome. And the last question.
You said that last time.
No, this is the last question. What is an idea?
I think I had some really arsey answer, like, it's like a structured thought, which I'm not even sure if that is a correct definition or not, but it's what I came up with on the spot, I think.
Mate, you went to Cambridge. I'm listening to you all day. I'll believe whatever you say. Gaz, thanks again, mate. I really do appreciate the time, and I will speak to you along the way. Hopefully when we're back in the summer, we'll get to meet up.
For sure, yeah.
Cheers, mate. Nice one.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you or someone you know has a story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us via our socials or visit www.crossingthepondpodcast.com to get in touch. Please be sure to subscribe, like, or leave a comment if you can. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Cross Pond Podcasting.